We are very happy to welcome you to this webinar. I am Jeremy Weinstein. I'm the CEO and founder of Thegreendata. And we organize this type of webinar in order to discuss about subject around agriculture and data and the way that data can help to take better decision in agriculture transition. And I'm very happy to welcome Anco van Schaik and Michaela Aschbacher. I'm sorry, I'm a French guy, so I don't have a good accent. Okay, to this webinar about the usage of Cool Farm Tool data for Danone strategy about regenerative agriculture transition. So, if you want to ask question, and I'm sure that you will have a lot of questions to ask, don't hesitate to use the Q&A tab where you can put your question, and then we will, of course, try to answer to as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. The duration is, we hope, about 1 hour, 45 minutes for presentation, and then 15 minutes for questions. And then, of course, if you have more time, and then we can go after this 1 hour if you need it. Okay, so just a few words about Thegreendata. In few words, what we do is that we use data to help business companies to take better decisions in different type of business needs, production, sales, financing, risk, transition, and the subject of carbon. Of course, we work mainly for big companies like banks, insurances, cooperative, and food processors. And we are a little team, but very dedicated to what we do. So we make modelization of agriculture, mainly data science, and we build IT products, IT software that are mainly custom made based on our platform that hosts our modelization. I will now let Michaela make a presentation of Cool Farm Alliance. Michaela.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot for having me, for being able to participate at this webinar. So I'm going to quickly introduce yourselves also to the Cool Farm Alliance and why we are here having both Thegreendata and Danone as two members of the Cool Farm Alliance. And I see from the attendee list that there's actually quite some members that we have, or some content people from our from a member community. But still, for those who are not yet members and maybe might not know the Alliance that well, I just wanted to give a quick overview about the Alliance, what it is, and the tool that we are having and we are discussing today as a basis for the work between the Thegreendata and Danone. Please go to the next slide. So what you can see here is the 112 members and partners that we have currently in the Cool Farm Alliance. This is an alliance that has been created in let's say 2008 to 2010 between a few parties that wanted to bring GHG calculations and the IPCC guidances on greenhouse gas inventories to the farm level. And since then, they have created a Cool Farm tool as a medium for this. And since then, we have grown into a really big platform of alliance that represents farmer representatives at the beginning of the supply chain, manufacturers, retailers, technical service providers who also have their own kind of farm management solutions and integrate with the Cool Farm tool. So as Thegreendata and Danone do in their way, and also consultancies that work with the Cool Farm tool. They all kind of integrate it in their own way and see how they can use it in agriculture with farmers to just introduce more regenerative, sustainable practices to the farm and use it as a decision tool for GHG calculations and improving an environmental footprint. And also the bottom line that what you see, we have a lot of kind of collaboration with universities. So the models that have been created for the Cool Farm tool are fully science-based, built in collaboration with different institutions that are, of course, renowned, and we still have a very strong relationship with them. If we go to the next slide, we can see kind of what we've talked now, kind of the ecosystem that we have around the Cool Farm. We have universities that are there that we have, we have a strong partnership with them. They use the tool also as a research tool. We introduce with them the latest science to it and want to create a system that, or a tool that gives, that includes globally applicable methods and guidelines such as IPCC or GHG protocol. So for them, it's important to do this in order to enable other stakeholders to use those tools, such as, for example, farmers who can use the tool to assess the data based on the outcomes that they get, create action plans to build soil carbon, improve and include practices in their farms and communicate about it. So really have tangible data that they can then share with others. And that's also something, of course, that is relevant for the businesses that we work with. They collate supply chain emissions. So really see what is happening throughout the supply chain when it comes to CO2 emissions, track the improvements of their suppliers, engage and reward farmers, but also suppliers, and then also report against certain targets that they might have. If we go to the next slide. So this is basically also one of the things that Thegreendata and Danone did in their way and how to use the Cool Farm tool. So they're going to present that later. When we talk about the tool, what that is, if you don't know it yet, so it's a kind of it has been started as a GHG calculator that is fully science-based, as I said. So it was developed in collaboration with all those universities, and we use for this just peer-reviewed studies and global data sets also that we base it on. So for us, that's very kind of builds the strong credibility that we want to stand for. We have it backed by the industry, so really the members that also help us continuously to build the tool. It's globally applicable, as you can also see, but it's still farmer focused. So we try to include and create an empiric model that uses practices on farm and data that a farmer has available. And so not to make it too complex, but still give a credible assessment of your emissions. And also there are different metrics that you have in the Cool Farm tool. If we go to the next slide. What that means, it's multi-pathway and multi-metric. So you cannot only assess your crops, but also, let's say, a GHG footprint of your crops, as well as water efficiency and food loss and waste. But you also have the option to assess this for your feed, but also use the Cool Farm tool for livestock GHG assessments. And so the combination of those two are certainly a very interesting part when we talk about how Danone uses it. If we go to the next slide. This is kind of just to give you a quick overview. So I'm not going to take the time to really go into the tool as of now. Everybody can create a free account and also test it out if you have not used it yet. And really just go in and see, how it works, what we're requesting. And on this slide, kind of it summarizes it all on one page, which means when we make a livestock assessment in the Cool Farm tool, we are looking at different criteria that are relevant on farm. And that starts with, let's say, the production itself, so how much milk you produce. And then that is also used as a basis for getting a result. So any footprint is also, broken down not only for the whole farm, but also for each kilogram of milk that you produce. Next to this, we look at the herd. So we really look at the different characteristics of the animals that you have on farm, the incomes and outcomes of animals, the time they spend on let's say on the pastures. Then we have a feed module. So of course we look at the emissions of feed, which are quite a big contributor to emissions. And here, as I said before, you can really include your own crop assessments. If you produce your own feed, you can reflect really more precise and detailed emissions by including it into the livestock module, or simply using kind of a set of feeds, let's say, types that you feed to the different animals within your herd. Finally, also, of course, what is relevant for a livestock assessment is manure management. So that's produced by the different categories again, and how you handle this. as well as the energy used on farm, any type of, whatever machinery that you use, or storage, heat, anything that happens on farm is included. And finally, of course, the transport. And with the transport, we mean also kind of inputs that you have, or also, for example, if you have manure or fertilizers that you bring in, as well as then transporting the milk to the first. So either you assess it up to farm gate, but you can also decide to include even transport beyond the farm gate and include kind of the milk transportation to the first processor. And that kind of gives you an idea that this is a farm level assessment of your GHG footprint. If we go to the next slide, if you go to the full farm tool, this is how it would look like. We have this pathway, as I told you, with different entries. I see that I've actually chosen the wrong, it's a crop footprint. I wanted to see a livestock one. But anyways, we have an overview of that as well if you're interested in that. But setup is the same. You have these different sections and tabs where you fill in the data manually. You partially can choose from default values. On the right hand side, you have a live summary that changes whenever you enter a new, kind of new data or update your data, so that adjusts and also allows you to kind of follow those emissions you have. And if we go to the next slide, finally, when you complete kind of an assessment, you get in the end, as I said, your total emissions per farm, as well as the emissions per per kilogram of milk that you produced. And see also with the graphs that we have in the tool, these layers of, where the biggest levers are, where you have the biggest emission sources, and also use those results in the end to tackle that on farm and create strategies on it. And this is what you get in the tool. There is a different ways of analyzing the data also on a larger scale. And I hand over with this to I think Anco, and exactly see what they are doing with the data that they get out of the Cool Farm tool.
Thank you, Michaela. So once again, if you wanna ask a question, don't hesitate to push it in the discussion tab. And well, I think that's now it's Anco. It's Anco's slide.
Yes. So hello everyone. My name is Anco van Schaik. Very pleased to be here with the Thegreendata and Cool Farm tool to present to you how we are applying Thegreendata tools and targeted to expand that in the coming period. I'm responsible for innovations and guiding innovations in Danone in the agricultural cycle. We came across Thegreendata around a year ago during an innovation sprint, and we saw one of the opportunities to collaborate to apply our transition for regenerative agriculture on the field using different modeling and the use of our data. And as you may know, Danone has an objective to reduce its carbon footprint, but also to apply regenerative agriculture into his farmers or into his supply chain. And by 2050, we need to be net carbon. And by 2030, we need to be able to reduce by 50% our carbon emissions. So we thought about, how can we apply that using the different tools and systems that we have? With the Thegreendata, we saw a possibility to simulate certain transitions and make more predictive simulations based upon the data that we already have by Cool Farm tool, but also other systems that we use, more reporting tools. And the way we would like to use the model is to also to predict where we are going to make it more tangible, and also to teach and help our farmers to make faster a transition and more accurate. And better use of our data will also make more targeted and easier interventions to our farmers and to our breeders. Either will it be on soil health or on herd management, biodiversity management. This is all what we have in mind when we transition to regenerative agriculture. And the way we would improve our strategy would also help us to look at easier and better at our data and structure our data in a better way. And also the Thegreendata would be able to help us with that. So that's what we have in mind, and looking forward to that particular collaboration between our companies. Yeah, maybe we can go next to the next point, Jeremy, when we look at the results of this innovation sprint that we had. So we were working on a prototype at first that could simulate the Danone's impact that we have with our farmers. So around 500 farmers in our network are being measured via the CoolFarm tool. That is our internal data, and based on that, we make an estimation of our farm's performance in the specific regions and the specific countries. So each farmer has a different type of farming systems, barn, pasture, and all have a different footprint. Well, that may be very familiar to us, but we used also the data and asked together with the Thegreendata to say, can you simulate, can you find correlations between the data, and let us define on which parameters, which buttons to push on in order to improve, and what is the correlation between both. And with this simulation, we will be able to then define minimum amount of changes on farm with the highest result on reduction of carbon emissions. So maybe, Jeremy, you could show how this works in practice.
Yes, so I'm going to show you the demo of the prototype that we've developed for Danone. So I have to change. I have to just 1 minute. I have to quit, and then I come back. Here I am. Okay, so hope everybody see my screen. So I show you here is it okay for the, yeah. So I show you here the final results that we have done based on the data treatment of CoolFarm tool and the discussion with business people in order to understand what were the good use cases that we had to prototype in order to create the most value for Danone. And the prototype that you see here is dedicated to country managers for Danone. So not to explain too deeply the organization of Danone, but you have global planning at a corporate level, at a worldwide level, and then you have country managers that have to implement the strategy country by country. And the question for this country manager is, what do I have to do? What are my best leverage to reduce my carbon impact in the next 5 years? And so the prototype works like this. You just here have the estimation at the country level. So we take CoolFarm tool and we have a first estimator, a statistical estimator of the average impact of carbon in Spain, and then you make simulation based on this estimator. You do a simulation, for instance, saying that you want to increase percentage of fat, you want to increase the yield, you want to reduce DMI, you want to reduce soy per year on the farm, you want to increase percentage of feed produced on the farm, and you want to do it in different time scales. So for instance, I take 4 years to do the first plan, 5 years to the second plan, etc. So I create my own path, actually. I create my own trajectory, and then I can play with my data at a country level, saying, yeah, okay, I see what is my plan, I see what is my curve, and I see when I can target my objective. So it's a strategic planning based on real data, and that's really important. So everything here is based on Cool Farm Tool data at a worldwide level and at a country level. And we have created a statistical estimator of CO2 emission for dairy farms that I can show you in detail in the second part of this webinar. And you will see that you have some mathematics, and you have also a lot of discussion with the business people in order to create the best model that fits business needs and has scientific credibility. So here you are at a country level. Now you can go at a region level, so you can have the same type of experience, user experience for Catalonia, and also the objective is to go down to the final farm and to have simulation and plans and reduction planning at a farm level. And the of course interest of this type of tool is to have a global model that is coherent between micro local action plan at a farm level, regional action plan, country action plan, and global action plan. So everybody's on the same model, everybody's on the same data treatment, and then we can go together and collaborate and accelerate the transition plan. So now maybe if you are okay with that, but I'm sure that you are okay, is to talk a little bit about mathematics, and to open the box and to look what is inside this tool, and how we have managed to use Cool Farm Tool data in order to create this modelization and this prototype. So first of all, this is a quick presentation of our methodology, and that's quite important because you have to understand that it's not magic. It's I mean, to create a prototype like that, you have to first of all have a first phase that is called meiotic. Meiotic is when you talk with business people to understand what are the needs and I mean, what are the tools that are already used, what are the objective of the company, the organization, and so on, etc. So this is the first phase where we have discussed a lot with Anco and his team, and to understand what would be the best first step to go toward regenerative agriculture. And this is in this first phase that we have decided to go directly with the Cool Farm Tool data and to have a first estimation of CO2 emission. But of course, that's the first step. And after that, the second step is the demonstrator, when you first make an analysis of the needs, you discuss with the people, you look at the tool, you look at what they have, and then you do data engineering. And after that, you create a demonstrator very quickly, and you iterate on the demonstrator in order to be sure that the business people are aligned with what you're doing. So it's very important to be, I would say, very value oriented, and not to do data on your, on your office by yourself and so on. So it's a very collaborative experience that we have lived with Danone and with all the team of Danone. Now, if we look at the real data treatment, and now we will talk about data, you have 5 main steps that comes from the data and that goes to a final prototype for users. The first step is that you aggregate data and you do pre-processing. The second step is the statistical modelization that I will explain to you. You will see it's not very difficult to understand. The third step is that you do refinement of the model with the business people. So you adapt and you do compromise, you discuss and you negotiate with the business people in order to be sure that what you do fits their needs. The fourth step is the evaluation of the model to ensure credibility of the model, that to be sure that you don't say, of course, you have error, but you don't have too much error. And the final step is the prototype that you create in order to scenarize the data. So now let's go quickly in this step. The first step is the data aggregation and the data understanding. So we have collected the Cool Farm Tool data around different countries. So we had the chance to have the data of Danone coming from different type of country, 11 countries actually. So here you have a first, I would say, a first job that is to do data cleaning and to aggregate data, to understand data. You had data that are in Russian, so it's a little bit difficult to treat, etc. But I mean, you clean your data, you create your data set, you try to understand your data. Here you have this little nice figure that I really love because it's very colored. It's a correlation matrix. So what does it mean? It means that you take all the variables that are of Cool Farm Tool, coming from Cool Farm Tool, and then you just look at the correlation. So of course, you have a line in blue that means that a variable is correlated with itself. That's very normal, so it's very blue. But you have a lot of variables that are very strongly correlated and other that are in red that are anti-correlated. So anti-correlated means that when you have a variable, for instance, that increase, the other one decrease, and so on. So you have this first understanding of the data that you have, of the panel that you have. As Anco said, we had around 500 data, 500 audits made on farms. That was, well, I mean, it's something that you can play with to do a statistical model. You create clustering of the data. So you have different blocks of data. And then once you have understood the data and the correlation, and you have your 88 numeric variables that are ready to be treated by algorithm, then you can go to the next step. And the next step is that what we wanted to do is to simplify the Cool Farm Tool model in order to do a statistical model. If you want to do simulation, of course, it's better to have a little number of parameters. As you've seen there on the prototype, you have 6 parameters. On the Cool Farm Tool, you have a lot of variables. You have more than 100 parameters. So how do you do to make simplification, but without losing too much precision? That's a real problem. That's an interesting mathematical problem. How do you reduce the dimensions of your system without losing too much precision? Where are the big variables? Where are the big weighted variables? And to do that, we have an algorithm, a type of magical algorithm called Lasso, list absolute shrinkage and selection operator, that help us to reduce the number of variables of a system and to monitor the error that you're creating by doing so. So of course, if we take the Cool Farm Tool model and then you decrease from 88 to, for instance, 56, well, you don't lose a lot of precision, right? I mean, you have a very few errors, so that's flat. And then at a moment you decrease and you have not enough variables to maintain this precision. So you have the error that is increasing. And of course, if you have only 2 variables, you have a very big error. So the algorithm tells you, well, the best return on investment or the best return on simplification is here, right? It's 17 parameters. So if you reduce from 88 to 17 parameters, well, you don't destroy too much precision. You control your error, and then you can reduce the dimension of your system, but selecting the good variable. So that's a good, I mean, that's a good news, because you have systems that have so many hazards and uncontrolled parameters that you can't really reduce the number of variables of the system without making the error exploding. Here we are on a system that are quite controlled. That's normal. I mean, it's CO2 emission. It's not, you know, hazard. It's controlled. So here we are able to reduce the number of variables to 17 without losing a lot of precision. And that's the first mathematical result. Now let's go to the third step, which is, okay, does it fit business needs? Because mathematics is cool, but business needs is, you know, people that will use this prototype. So how do you reconcile mathematics and business needs? So you go with your model with 17 parameters and you go and see the business guys and you say, okay, this is my model. What do you think about that? The good news is that, well, they were quite okay with our model. I mean, it was in agreement with their intuition and with the way that they were working. And we had a discussion. I mean, it's really negotiation, right? I mean, you have business people that want to include this type of variables that are not in your models, and that they say that these type of variables are not very useful because it's not, you know, you cannot do a lot of things with this type of decision. So what you do is that you make a compromise between your mathematical model and the business needs and the business usage. You try to fit your mathematical model inside the business usage. And you have a final model where we have obtained 13 useful cool farm tool parameters for business. It's not 17, it's 13. So of course the error is increased, but I mean, that's okay, because after that you have the 4 steps where you control the error of the model. And I mean, it's a simplified model. It's a first model, it's a statistical model, but for this type of model, we have a R2 that is 0.74, which is quite good for this type of model. Of course, we can now try to increase the precision. We can now try to, for instance, enhance modelization to intricate variables and to have additional models that will explain situation in a better way. But I mean, at the first start, using only lasso algorithm, well, I mean, that's a good performance. So that's a very promising model. And we have decided to build the prototype based on this first model, which must be improved. We know that, we know already what are the weaknesses of this model, but that's the first step model that helps to give a first plan and first scenario and has a quite good credibility. And the 5 steps is to create a tool, to create a prototype, to create a use case out of your model, meaning something that is integrable in your processes, in your decision processes, in your organization. So we have made a tool dedicated to country managers that helps country manager to estimate the carbon emission of their country and to be able to define a plan based on 6 parameters. So you have 13 parameters for the model, but you have only 6 parameters that are the good parameter, the parameter that interests the country manager, that the parameter that he wants to play with. And that's just usage. I mean, you don't have to, there's nothing to do out of that. I mean, that's a real life. They use this type of parameters to make their plan. So the tool is adapted to the usage. And this is what we've done. We've transformed a model into uses by selecting the 6 CFT simulation parameters, 3 geographic scales, and 2 main use cases. The first use cases, which is for the country manager, and the second use case is that is more at a farm level. So it's a more collaborative use case where you have farm managers that go to the dairy farmers and just discuss with them to the different type of leverage that they can have to reduce their CO2 emission. So in 5 steps, as you can see, we've started from the data and we arrived at a prototype with the usage. And now there is I would say the next steps of this project that we are building now with Danone. It's steps that, of course, are about improving the model. So the carbon model that we have today is a simplified model, but that must be improved. And with Cool Farm Tool support, we are a proud member of the Cool Farm Alliance, of course. The second step is to expand this model toward regenerative agriculture, including other sources of data like animal welfare, meat production, economical modelization, and so on. So we started with carbon, but of course, the idea is to have a more global model for regenerative agriculture transition. The third step is also the industrialization of these tools. I mean, here we are now, I would say, on a lab mode. It's prototype. It's lab. Now it has to be integrated with IT, with source of data, with different tools, and this needs to be industrialized. So we have a platform that is able to industrialize a model that we develop in our lab. And after that, of course, there are other tools that we could imagine out of this model, because once you have a model, you have usages, but of course you can imagine other usage like why not farmer tools or marketing tools or different type of tool to accelerate the transition of Danone regenerative agriculture in dairy farms. So Anco and Michaela, I don't know if you want to make an intervention between
No, I can add something, Jeremy, and thanks for the explanation. Exactly, that's what you have been describing and saying here, is that we would like to expand, or let's say improve and expand the model, and we are in a starting point of applying our regenerative agriculture practices on our farmers, with our farmers together. And it's not only about let's say dairy farmers and the way they reduce carbon emissions, but also to look at the way they manage their soil health on their farms. It's the way they manage their water. It's the way they treat their herds. It's the way they do their financial planning, and all of that has an interaction with each other. It's therefore extremely complex to improve one aspect and to see the impact of one first on the other. Let's say on the other aspects, I would say. So herd management on soil, or vice versa, or on cost. And one of the important thing is, how are we going to measure regenerative agriculture? How are you going to measure improved soil health? Now there are data, there are systems, there are tools and technology to do that. You need to invest in these types of technology, and that generates again a set of data, and that data could be integrated in the model together with the Cool Farm tool, and then we are only expanding, let's say, the model, and be better able to make the predictions by, if we change this, what is the impact on our emissions, or what is the impact on our carbon sequestration, for instance, on our soil. So this is where we are at the starting point, but hopefully with your solutions, we will be able to make better and faster, the right decisions and the right investments. With our farm managers and with our farmers in our supply chain.
Yeah, and maybe from my side to add, it is, I mean, of course, the Cool Farm tool, also we have recently kind of written also an article on that on our website, where we talked about just top, practices that you have in a regenerative agriculture. And and also different systems that you can apply, such as, rotational grazing. And it is important to acknowledge that the Cool Farm tool has a lot of, opportunities, but also some limitation when it comes to regenerative practices. Not every practice might be possible to assess in the tool. So, for example, rotational grazing is just something that has not been included in a model because there was at that, at this stage specifically when it comes to grasslands and sequestration in grasslands, it's just a lot of questions that are still open, and so there was no, kind of scientific, let's say, data that we could use to model that in the tool. So there are limitations. It's important to be aware of that, but at the same time has a lot of opportunities in how you can already use the data that you get out of the tool to follow these practices and see the improvements, and that can go even for soil health. I mean, it cannot go into that details, and but for example, simply by, over the time monitoring how your soil organic matter increases. So by implementing certain practices, you can also still collect the data on increased soil organic matter, which already gives you quite a good indicator that your soil is doing good. And then it's just a matter, of course, of linking it and seeing what is a casualty or what is actually the effect on the practices that you implement. So the data that comes out can be used for such monitoring. And then, I mean, when we talk here about improving carbon models, I think that's what is the big strength of the Cool Farm Alliance, that we just have, the kind of many players in the industries that share the same questions, the same issues, the same challenges. And we have, different working groups or also committees that are there to work on these questions. How can we implement and improve the models that we have represented in the tool? I mean, we have based, specifically when it comes to the dairy model, it's based on IDF guidelines. IPCC is always kind of the library and the baseline for the Cool Farm tool as such. So that was one of the questions, by the way. But in general, these working groups, there is one that looks in beef and dairy. So see, what do we know, how everybody kind of works on regenerative agriculture practices nowadays. So how can we improve the model so we can show those improvements? Or also for soil, there's a question, how can we improve the methodology on soil carbon sequestration, for example? And so we are working on it. We have PhDs going on that try to improve these models. We try to update to IPCC to make it more credible, or also more updated. And if there is a possibility for include something as soil health, other parameters that are out there, we of course would go down that road. It's always a question of the resources, the available science that backs it up, etc. Yeah, sorry.
So that we have some questions, actually. First question for me, so I take it. Old souvenir, but could it be interesting to apply a PCA to data first to understand reduced variable that are linked? So, okay, I'm not the data scientist of the Thegreendata team, but I have asked people that know better than me, and the answer is that the lasso that we have showed you is obviously a methodology or mathematical method that is more adapted than PCA and more detailed. Now, Guillaume, if you want to go deeply in the discussion, maybe we can discuss about that after this webinar, I think, with the people that will be able to answer. A question of Monica for Anco. Once you've validated calculation, is Danone planning to offer financial incentive to farmers for the carbon sequestration? And if so, what has your process been for deciding the amounts of US dollar of Euroton of carbon?
Yeah, I think that is a direction. Ultimately, we need to reduce the amount of carbon in the chain. At the end, we have an objective to reduce by 2030, and we need to, because we can't go to zero, we need to offset that by carbon credits, I'm afraid. but that's costing us money. So if we are able to validate improvements that are done by farmers, we then be able to finance those farmers, and because we are lowering our footprint anyhow. So that is then a way to incentivize farmers. And in fact, we do that already to a certain extent with our milk. So these days it's not anymore about milk output, but it's more milk quality. Milk quality is good. When milk quality is good, you can go to the next step. How is a farmer be able to be environmental friendly? And we have certain KPIs in certain countries, I have to say, where we apply those reward systems. So absolutely, it will be there. Maybe not now, but in the near future, it will be in place. And then again, how is it measured? A Cool Farm tool is one way actually to measure it. Let's be very honest. Is that if you plug in all those informations and you see an improvement, you can plug a reward behind that.
Okay. Another question for you, Anco, in the same, I think the same area. Do you envisage this type of simulation tool that we have shown might be adapted to be a collaboration tool for Danone to measure and reward farmers for improvement? So could it be a way of, I don't know, contract-based tool or something like this?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's in line with what Monica asked in the same way. If a farmer applies practices that could be simulated when we have a financial tech behind a change, but also that is based on if you do your work very good, Jeremy, and the calculation and the simulation is done properly. No, but yeah. In all seriousness, if that is validated, then you know where you're heading towards, and then the improvement has an effect, which then can be rewarded, because the ultimate goal is that all your farmers and your supply chain is improving, and the amount of money that companies have to buy because of their public commitments is simply reducing. So that is absolutely a way.
Okay, a question of Richard. He says, I'm exploring possibilities for food carbon labeling or apps that show consumers' data for specific food producers or farm. So it's data to show to consumers. What would be the challenges, technical or other, to using carbon monitoring data for this purpose? Grateful to hear any views on this topic. So, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I can quickly reply. I'm not sure if it's sufficient, but at least, I mean, it's something that we heard about and we got interested for also from different, let's say, different parties or contacts that are out there, and trying to really also show on package, we have on package labeling. This is the information that a consumer might want to have. What, is the sustainability behind a product, and GHG calculation certainly is one of them. I think the technical challenge is, first of all, what products are you looking at when it's processed food? We start to have very, different kind of ingredients. So that makes it very, very difficult, because of course there's very many different ingredients, also many maybe coming from different suppliers, different, so producers. So it might be a bit difficult to cover them all and really do that on a larger set for a larger set of products. I think as we've seen, I mean, in the milk industry, of course, we talk about milk, so that might be easier. And then in the end, it's about, really getting credible data, and also just assuring, I think, within the companies when they collect the data and how far they want to, also data protection wise, what can be shared, what should be shared, and so on. So I think it's, and of course, when we look at the Cool Farm tool, there is no verification happening at this stage. So we simply provide the tool as it is, and we encourage our members to really look behind that data and make use of it, such as, Danone does in this case, and And so it's about also the credibility of the data that is entered here. And we try to move forward also in that sense to make data more verifiable, seeing what kind of measure, measures we can take to allow such verification, which kind of would be a good basis, I guess, for such food labeling. But I think it's different kind of aspects that need to be taken into consideration in the end. Yeah, and of course the availability of the companies to share that data with such apps.
Yes. So maybe I can bring our view on the subject of how do you match consumer data information and what's happening really on the field. It's not an easy subject. In France, it's called, I don't know in Europe, but in France, it's called the Eco Score. And the French government have launched recently a lot of experimentation on the Eco Score. So how do you create a score that reflects in the fairly the environmental impact of the food production for consumers? Well, personally, I strongly believe in modelization. So I strongly believe that there is a fit to find between credibility, feasibility, and differentiation, consumer product differentiation on the market. Of course, you cannot audit 100% of the production, but on the other hand, you cannot just have an average of impact for, I don't know, milk. I mean, you have to find a good balance between credibility and feasibility. And I believe that modelization, typically what we are doing here, I mean, statistical estimation is a good way to go toward a score that would be feasible and credible. And we are starting to work with different companies on this subject that is it's becoming very hot in France, actually. Okay. So we have a lot of questions. I don't know if we'll be able to make them also. A question of Frank. Today, farmers are already largely dependent on F&B business. When using the Cool Farm tool and Green-Data model, don't they run the risk of fully losing their sovereignty and independence by becoming simple subcontractor of F&B industries? How fast do you anticipate farmers will accept this?
Yeah, maybe I can answer, Frank, and it is a valid question. Here is we leave it up to the farmers if they would like to work with Danone. There is no in the contracts an obligation to follow certain practices if you don't want to. We do let's say support certain ways of producing milk, your management of your herds, your financial management, but it's always up to the farmer to decide if they would like to use and apply certain technology. At the end, farmers are measured on cost and on performance, on quality asset, and on environmental friendliness. And if that relation certainly doesn't work, we have to say goodbye to each other. So it's not I would say that stringent as a subcontractor, and we tell a farmer what to do. That's not how it works. But the better the relation is, the better the mindsets are aligned, the easier and the better we work together also in applying our goals. And I don't believe that using the Cool Farm tool or Green-Data models will make them more dependent on food and beverage industries, if I am understanding your abbreviation correctly.
And maybe just to like a quick add, because there is other questions. So I think also that is certainly one of the challenges, or maybe also the opportunities for a tool like the Cool Farm tool, that it can be used by the farmers themselves as well. So it depends a little bit on how, how you want to engage with the Cool Farm tool. I mean, farmers have nowadays to report against many different standards and practices, use different farm management tools, get different requirements from different buyers. So I think we are always happy if you, have the Cool Farm tool be used by the members that we have for creating engagement strategies with the farmers, not only, to show, okay, there you go, you need to use that model, but really also trying to, make them understand what it means. So if they're really engaged or want to improve their practices, what they can actually learn from this data. And so also to help farmers or help to simplify data entries, make it more automated for them. These kind of activities is certainly, would be valid from food and beverage industries, and not leaving farmers alone, but supporting it in them. And then, of course, the question on data privacy and ownership, that's always a very big issue. I mean, every user that we have in the tool generally will be the owner of their own data. And whenever they send assessments to, they share assessments, it's their own decision to do that. Of course, not always farmers use the tool, themselves, but use it in collaboration with agronomists or etc. So it's always it's a fine edge for sure, to not only take something from the farmers, but use tools like the Cool Farm tool to empower them as well.
Yeah, and there is a question of Anonymous that has the same type of question, saying that input data is key for estimating GHG CSEC. What approaches will be used for collecting the input data for farmers? So I believe that the question behind that is that who owns the data? What's the use of the data, and of course, how can we use data to collaborate between on the food chain?
And maybe to add on that, I mean, if you look at the Cool Farm tool, I mean, every model is different and every tool is different. The Cool Farm tool is quite dependent on manual data entry. Therefore, there can also be, data errors or so, but at least you're the one who inputs that data. So we try to give guidances. We have created an e-learning course, and also the info buttons in the tool, etc. All these things help you to fill in that tool. We want to be quite clear on what you can do and what you shouldn't do. For example, also when it comes to carbon sequestration, not misuse it, but use it in a wise way by updating our methodology to IPCC 2019. Of course, we want to improve those things. So we just want to give guidance on that. Then secondly, it's a lot of input the guidance. Then, our members can also use API integration, so automated integrations to facilitate even that manual input and combine it with some external data collection, satellite imageries, which we don't have yet in the Cool Farm tool, but find different kind of ways to simplify that input. And so it can be both kind of manual and maybe also automated on the members level when they collaborate with farmers.
Yeah. Okay, three last question. A question of Merve for me. Have you applied the Maya platform for other products than dairy? So yes, the question is yes, we have applied Maya for crops, working with Axerial, which is one of the biggest, or the biggest, I think, cooperative, crop cooperative in France, and also in wine, in the Bordeaux, the Bordeaux wines, where we have modelized similar in a similar way, not using Cool Farm tool, but because they are not used already in the wine yards. But we have made a first modelization of agroecological transition in the wine yard. So yes, we're working on other products. Another question: what other soil health indicator beside SOM are being measured for regenerative agriculture? I suppose in the Cool Farm tool.
Yes, I mean, Anco, I think also answered that before and written just for the Cool Farm tool. I mean, that's one indicator. So we do not really look at soil health in depth. So there are soil characteristics where you just look at, is it a moist soil, what type of soil structure you have, but that's about it. So it's not really going into detail and fine tuning that. So it's a question that we have ourselves and want to take up in a better way in the future if possible. But yeah, just a few soil characteristics indeed.
Yeah, that needs to improve, and there are soil scanners available, but they need to be calibrated for each type of soil in a different country region. So there's a massive amount of work to do that. It's absolutely, I would say, the best way to actually measure everything. But the amount of samples that need to be taken and so on, that takes just a long time. But ultimately, that is my goal, to have it all measured on the areas where we operate, and to somehow feed that into one of the models, so that you can do an actual live simulation with the actual data. What is the impact if you change something? But of course, also the change will take time, so you need constantly to measure and to measure. And I'm not sure that, and there my knowledge is lacking. If let's say satellite imaging is already providing a solution. I know it's out there, but not in that particular details. So I'm curious to learn if there is something that's a technique that can easily measure soil health. Then I would be the one to.
I have some idea.
Maybe.
About that.
and very happy. So if anyone has any kind of suggestions, always feel free also to share with any one of us, and direct also to the Cool Farm Alliance, and also to be quite sometimes a little bit how to say, pragmatic or realistic. I don't know. It depends. We are still, we're different. There are different metrics that we are looking at. But when it comes to GHG, we also have to take into consideration what does actually affect GHG calculation. So yes. If soil health doesn't affect it, our tool, there is a limitation to what we can integrate and not to overload it. And so this is why, for example, data integration, other programs, combining different tools that can provide the GHG data on one side coming from the Cool Farm tool, and then also other aspects that can be outside of the tool, with other maybe available measurements that look at soil health, and therefore you can combine then the effects and feed that into your practices or strategies.
Okay, so some final questions. Question of Clare. Does the Thegreendata model calculate anything additional to the CFT, or is it just about reducing the amount of data needed to arrive at the same answer regarding carbon emissions? So on this prototype is about reducing the amount of data needed. So it's to make a statistical estimator based on the Cool Farm tool data. So that's the first step, is to simplify the model and monitoring the precision and the error. Now, the second step, as I've told you, is to integrate other elements, and specifically economical elements or animal welfare score elements. So not elements that are directly related to carbon, but to have a global model that integrate carbon model and other type of models, and that helps to have a global modelization, systemic modelization of regenerative agriculture. Hope I have answered this question. Question of Bruno Le Poivre. Do you think those type of tools are adapted for developing countries or adaptable for developing countries? For instance, in Danone Foundation, projects like the one in Senegal, La Laiterie du Berger. Anco?
No, I think they are absolutely adaptable, as long as we have measurements and have data, which we have in almost all of our cases. However, really exotic places, maybe not 100% complete. That's for sure. And unfortunately, I don't know if we measure everything in this particular project. But we tend to measure all farm performance as much as we can. So yeah.
And the tool is indeed, I mean, it's not made either just for large scale farms, but also can be used by smallholders. And it is a global tool. So indeed, it can be used by in Senegal. It might, of course, not always fit. So, it's just different production systems. So for example, also when it comes to feed, there might be very many differences in how the options that we have currently available are applicable to that one. And so, yeah, I mean, we try to represent both of them. And not just large scale, but also small scale farmers in the models that we have.
Okay, and final question. I think that we have answered to all the questions. If I forgot one, please let me know. But I think that we have the final question of Isabelle. Very hard question. Is your model able to calculate the minimum footprint you could reach per unit of milk? That's a good question. It's it's a challenge. So for our point of view, we are the model that we have created is based, as you have understood, on panels, so on observations. So you can estimate the minimum footprint that you can reach per unit of milk, but based on the observation. So our model. And I will let Michael answer on the Cool Farm Tool model, but our model is not able to, I would say, estimate something that is irrelevant with the actual observation. So we can estimate the minimum footprint, but based on what is done and what is observed. So it's database science, right? Michael, I don't know if the Cool Farm Tool is able to imagine or to be able to help to create type of systems that would reduce the footprint.
I mean, it's really indeed a difficult question, because the question of what is the minimum possible footprint, right? It depends really also on global, on geographic conditions, on accessibility of practices that you can implement, that might be easier more in developed countries than, in developing countries. And so it's lots of aspects that can play into that. So what is the minimum footprint? One thing that I think is always be good to consider that this is an empiric model. So it's based on different peer-reviewed studies, and there is no perfect solution, that has the perfect footprint for everything. And also the model continuously is updated if there is new, science available, or we know that we can fine-tune certain things. So from today, a footprint can be, reduced by certain aspects, where tomorrow it could already look a little bit different. And so I think it's a flexible and very dynamic process when we look at modeling of carbon sequestration. I guess, I think the best thing to really go from 100 to 0 will be very difficult. But I think when you start with something, and you can also even use those simulations and say, what is the most possible things we could apply in certain farms, see what can be implemented, see what farmers actually can do, because some actions might just not be able to be taken under certain conditions, and then use those insights and just to reduce step by step. But there is always a certain uncertainty that is out there, and so I would consider that as well.
Well, I would like to answer also in I would say, philosophical point of view, meaning that having a theoretical minimum footprint for a dairy farm is something quite difficult to imagine in agriculture. I mean, agriculture is a very empirical science, where you do things, you measure things, you try to see how it works, because you don't really know how it works, right? I mean, so you try, you look, and then you discover and you experiment, and after that you have a measurement. So I would say, for my opinion, to have a theoretical minimum footprint doesn't have a lot of sense, actually. Okay, thank you, everybody. We have answered all the questions, I think. If you want to have additional discussions with Anco, Michael, and myself, please don't hesitate to send us a mail at contact@thegreendata.com. And we have been very happy to have you all at this webinar, a lot of people, and with all this interesting question. And we will let you know for the next issues of these webinars. And have a nice afternoon and nice evening for everybody. And see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you also from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
And thank you, Michaela and Anco, for your presence, of course.
Absolutely welcome. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.